Welcome, everyone, to Chirping Zebras, episode 37, the Patrice Bergeron episode. Mark Riley, alongside, as always, Gino Benda Jr., coming to you from AOA Studios in Beverly, the best place to tape a podcast or a record or whatever you want to tape. And also want to thank our sponsor off the hop, the Referee's Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And this is, we're hoping to have Patrice Bergeron on at one point.
Yep.
But this will be episode 37.
We'll accidentally on purpose make sure we cross paths with him at some point.
Well, we will at the Warrior for Life game on December 7th. He'll be there. They announced that lineup, which is quite a lineup, and we'll be there taping live. Well, I'll be there taping live. Hopefully you'll be there.
I'm going to try to get out of what I'm in to get there.
Yes, exactly. So, but tonight we have a very special guest tonight, and very excited about this one. He's an Emmy and a Golden Globe Award winner for his work on Ally McBeal. He's been involved with 35 feature films, including our favorite film and my personal film that I think is the best hockey movie and best sports movie ever.
And if someone asks me what my favorite movie of all time is, it's always Slapshot.
Absolutely. We want to welcome Peter Burrell to Chirping Zebras. Welcome, Peter.
Hi there, guys. Glad to be here.
Welcome.
And you were an assistant director on that movie, correct?
It was very early in my career, and a friend of mine who had just become a first assistant. We were all trainees, apprentices in the Directors Guild. And he was working on a movie in Philadelphia, and he asked me to be his second assistant director. So I went down to Philadelphia, did that. And then a friend of mine who was producing Network, who I had worked with before, was replacing his first assistant director. And he asked me how Jonathan Sanger was, who went on to be a big producer with, big films and so forth. But he was thrilled to do it. And I said he was great. And so he said to me, well, I'm scheduled to be a second assistant director on a movie called Slapshot. Would you mind taking it over? And I said, say no more. So it was a good thing for me and a good thing for him. So off I went, and the rest is history.
And you, as far as hockey was concerned, you didn't really have any hockey experience prior to that.
Well, other than in my backyard in Rochester, New York, I would lay down plastic and run water on it and roll it and create a rink, and then build up pounds of snow around the sides as backboards, and then had speakers coming out of the living room. Couldn't skate for shit, but we had fun body blocking each other into the snowbanks.
That's awesome.
That's excellent.
There's plenty of referees that can't skate.
I could skate enough to get on and off the ice. Let's put it that way. I think
awesome.
Skiing, having been a skier, helped me be a skater.
Right, it's all edges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, skiing was what you actually wanted to do at one point, because you kind of found movies and whatnot kind of in that wasn't what you were planning on doing when you were back in the day when you were younger.
When I was real young, I wanted two things. I wanted to be a first-rate skier, and I wanted to be in show business. I wanted to tell stories. But I was more interested in doing live concerts. And I ended up starting to do that before and ended up actually doing a bunch of concerts in school. And then I was offered a job at an agency in New York, APA, and I was in their college concert division. And I did that for a while. Back then, there was a TV show. I don't know if you guys are old enough to know. It was called Laugh-In. It was kind of a precursor to Saturday Night Live. And I was on the road with them doing live concerts, and got to know Dan Rowan pretty well. And we got to talking because I had taken the job in the agency because I just wanted to kind of feel out the business, because I'd get to see everything. And when the tour was over, we ended up in California, and I spent some time with him and basically decided I really didn't want to be an agent anymore. But I had booked the Jefferson Airplane at Woodstock. So I came back to New York, went to Woodstock with the Jefferson Airplane, and then quit Monday morning and went to graduate school, got a degree in cinematography, and wanted to be a cameraman. I started doing some ski stuff. In fact, for my master's degree, I did a ski movie for the National Ski Patrol. So I was slowly finding out that I was able to combine my skiing experience with my film experience, which is why I got on Better Off Dead and Aspen Extreme and other movies doing the second units where you get paid to go skiing, which is not too bad.
That's awesome. Before Better Off Dead was one of my favorite movies of all time. John Cusack. I mean, that movie is classic.
Yep.
But before we get into that, what was it like to be at Woodstock backstage? I mean, with one of the bands, that must have been crazy.
It was absolutely nuts. You know, it started. I don't know if you want to go with this story, backstory on this or not, but
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
I was in my office. I had booked the Jefferson Airplane at my college, and it was their first concert east of the first college concert east of the Mississippi, and it went really well. So the agent at APA, who was representing everybody at that time, said, "Are you interested in being an agent?" And I said, "Gee, that's great." Well, they gave me the job, but then I had to do time in the military. So went off and did that, and then came back and started there. And well, I was sitting in my office one day, and this guy comes in with tie-dye shirt, bell bottoms and moccasins, quintessential hippie, right? And he won't sit in a chair. He sits on the floor of my office, crosses his legs, and says, "Man," he's like stoned. He's telling me, "Man, I got this dream. I want to put these rock bands together, and it's going to be a art fair. We're going to have pottery and organic food and all this stuff." And he had this fantasy. And then he reads off the bands that he wants. And I said to myself, "You better have a shitload." Can I swear on this deal or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, better
Let
have
her
a
rip.
shitload. You better have a shitload of money because it's going to cost you millions. And
Right.
so he left, and he said, "Well, I'd like to have the Jefferson Airplane." And so, okay. So I called the other agents around town, and they said, "Yeah, he was just here." And I said, it's before he left, I said, you're going to have to come up with a certain amount of money. And so about 3 weeks later, he dropped cash on all over town on all of these bands. And it was like, whoa, what is happening? Well, the guy who was sitting in my office turned out to be Michael Lang, the guy who created Woodstock. He was the voice of Woodstock. He recently passed away. He was a great guy. He actually had both feet on the ground and not floating in the air. He was pretty sharp. And Skip, what was his name? The guy, he was the voice of Woodstock, that very calming voice. He was the guy that created all the sound there, and they would use my office in New York as a prep place, to do it. Well, I had to go off with Ronan Martin, and when I came back, we went, and one agent was in Liberty at a Holiday Inn where the Jefferson Airplane was, and I was backstage. And all of a sudden on Friday, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it rained like hell. And Richie Havens played, I think, for a long, long time. And then the next day, the airplane was, the next day now, it was 500,000 people, helicopters, National Guard dropping food. And it was like crazy. And the airplane got a hold of me and said, "We're not coming unless we get our balance." And I said, "You have no idea what's going on here. There's no way you're going to get your balance. This is a free concert now. There's no borders. There's no gate. It's just a huge field of people. And so don't come." And one of the things that the airplane insisted on was they wanted to close Saturday night show, but they would, because they were very hot at that time. And they had just come out with what was the name of the album? Blessed Pointed Little Head or something. Anyway, I told them don't come. And so they wanted to be Saturday night show, but they would only defer that to the Rolling Stones, Dylan, and one other. Forget what it was. Rolling Stones, Dylan, can't remember the third. Anyway, none of those people came, and they got to close Saturday night show. And the revenge was having been so difficult. Even though I loved the Jefferson Airplane, I thought they were a very unique band. I mean, when you hear the Jefferson Airplane, you know exactly who they are. They have a very unique style and sound. Anyway, they ended up going on stage around 7:30 in the morning, and the party was over at that point because the peak of Woodstock was in the middle of the night when Sly Stone and Savannah and Beautiful Day and all these other bands made their mark. And my biggest moment in Woodstock, probably 4 o'clock in the morning, totally dark, and all of a sudden Sly Stone is going, "I want to take you higher," and the whole audience is going higher, and they all have candles. It was like surreal. Anyway,
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's the
That is
Woodstock
so
story.
cool to be a part of such a huge historical event, right? From
Yeah.
behind the scenes, it's just crazy.
And you were at the forefront of it. That's pretty cool. Like, yeah.
It was pretty. I still have my backstage pass somewhere.
Yeah, hold on to that for
Yeah.
sure. That's awesome. Now, our producer Josh is on with us. He's got plenty of our favorite scenes and some scenes that you have some great stories about from the greatest sports movie ever, Slapshot. I've only seen it 250 times, I bet.
When I
Well,
lived in
that's a few. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's a few more than the last time I saw you. So you've been watching even more.
I have. That's right. So just to give a backstory of how Peter and I met, we did a film festival up in Manchester at the Rex Theater.
Okay.
Jimmy Roach was involved with it. Jimmy Dunn, our buddy Jimmy Dunn, who's been on, he's been on the podcast. So they put together a film festival, and we do a live watching or showing of Slapshot. And on stage, we had a live studio audience, and we had myself, Peter, Jimmy Dunn, and the morning radio guy. I forget his name. So when they showed the movie, I wore my ref jersey. So when we wanted to
that's so
stop
cool.
and tell a story, I put my arm up and they'd stop the movie. And then Peter would tell a story. I'd tell a story about the war memorial. Jimmy Dunn would jump in. It was just a great experience.
That's pretty cool.
It really was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. So, and we're just happy that you could join us here on the Zebras, because this is just, I mean, you know, to talk to someone that was there at that movie, it's just, like, I'm like a little kid again, because I can't wait to get into this.
No, have you ever met the Hanson brothers?
I haven't. That's the funny thing. I've never met the Hanson brothers.
Oh, I met them a couple of times. Yeah. Yep. I met them a few times. I actually met Michel Voyer, his 50th birthday party out in Arizona. They have a hockey tournament every year out there. It's a men's league, a bunch of referees. It's great in May, right? It's like right at the end of the season, you just go out there, you put your feet in the thing, whatever. So like his 50th birthday party, one of the Hanson brothers came out, gave a big spiel, and we rented a party bus, and he came out and drank with us all night. It was awesome.
Nothing's changed.
But I do have to say this, and you know, like, so my old man, he's a storyteller, and he reffed one of them when they coached to the East Coast League, when they actually coached. And so one of the captains comes over one night, and you know, my father was done listening to him, so he goes, "Hey, you go over and tell Hanson, if he doesn't shut the fuck up, I'm gonna send him back to the hotel to play with his fucking toys." He goes, he almost fell over when he heard that story. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, how true could that be? So then you meet him and ask him the story. He's like, "I know your old man. Oh, that was hilarious. I remember that." So it's like unreal.
Yeah, when Paul Newman opens that door and they're playing with their trains, he's going, "What has we got here?"
That's so good.
Such a great scene.
Fucking machine took my Coke soda.
Fucking machine took my quarter.
That's one of my favorite scenes, is when they get introduced.
The stinking root beer.
You know, I did meet, who's a really cool guy, was Paul D'Amato. God rest his soul. He passed away recently.
Okay.
Who played Tim McCracken.
Yep.
Dr.
Hook.
Great guy, Massachusetts guy, and he was playing pro hockey at the time down, I believe, in Johnstown, right? Is that how he got? cast?
Well, what happened? It's funny when you say him. All I think of that hockey stick where he's almost
Yep.
carving. He's about
The
to
stick
carve a
fight,
slice out
yeah.
of the. um, we made most of the movie in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, because the Johnstown Jets were the Charlestown Chiefs, and Ned Dowd, who was Nancy Dowd's brother, and Nancy wrote the script. Ned was critical in putting it all together. In fact, Nancy gave him a tape recorder when he started talking about working in that league, and he went around and just taped everything. So nothing's fabricated in the movie. It's all right there. But a lot of those hockey players were real hockey players. George Roy Hill wanted to have. It was more important for him to have people that could play hockey and see if they could act, and then have a few actors like, Michael Onkeen and Paul Newman and Jerry Hauser and stuff like that. But for the most part, these are hockey players, and every actor who could skate in Hollywood was auditioning for that. There was rehearsals all over California for weeks for that run. And Ned knew all these guys, and a lot of the visiting guys were from other hockey teams. So the magic of Slapshot is, I think, tied to that, because there was no disconnect between script, study, actor, try and be a hockey player. You're already a hockey player. And the thing is that that Steve and Jeff Carlson and Dave Hansen were just really funny guys. I mean, they were fun guys. They were a pain in the ass, but they were always. There's one scene where we were shooting we had an old barn or warehouse out in the country outside of Johnstown, where we would do the announce booth, and where the interviews would happen. And this was one night where the Hansons were supposed to be there. Well, whenever the Hansons, and I've worked on other sports films, the thing with athletes is they'll be there, they'll get ready, they'll do it. But if they wait too long, all of a sudden they're gone. They lose it. But these guys were constantly gone. And this time we looked around, they weren't there. Where were they? And we're in the middle of shooting, and the big doors of the arena open up, and in come the guys. They've stolen some guy's tractor, and they're all sitting on the tractor singing the Beverly Hillbillies theme. And I was standing next to Dee Dee Allen, who was the editor on the picture, a really highly regarded first-rate editor. And she looked at me and she said, they're a pain in the ass, but they sure are funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is fantastic. I love it.
The other thing is, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the other thing was, because they would wander off, and my job I was I'm at low end of the totem pole, but I was the guy that had to deal with the hockey players, and a few of the other ADs who were kind of militaristic didn't really. You don't want to take a professional actor and say, if you were to say to the guys, "Come on, guys, let's be quiet," and they would all go, "Okay, come on, guys, let's be." I mean, it was like just a wrong way to deal with these guys. So you just had to let them. You just had to let them be. So when we started the movie, those of us who, a lot of times we had to be standing on the ice for 12 hours, and your toes don't get cold when you stand on the ice. Your whole leg gets cold all the way up to your groin, right? So we called Bauer Skates, who had been providing the skates for the hockey players, and they shipped out a bunch of skates so all the crew members could be wearing skates. So my job, unlike others, was I had to be on the ice and off the ice, because if we needed somebody, I had to go into the dressing room or whatever. So I carried a set of skate guards, which I hung over the antenna of my walkie-talkie. So when I left the ice, I would throw those on and walk around. Well, invariably, when I'd go to the dressing room looking for the Hanson brothers, they wouldn't be there, but I knew where they were. They were at a bar in Johnstown. So I'm walking around with skates and skate guards, the streets of Johnstown, walking into a bar with skates and skate guards on, saying, "Hey guys, drink up. We got to go back." Okay.
That is outstanding.
It was the craziest movie it was the craziest movie I've ever worked on. It could never be made today. never get made today. With
And
all of,
with the political correctness and all that, I
well,
would think
also
that,
the HR and all that stuff, and yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
But it
I
was,
think what
Well, it's hockey locker room talk in a movie set, right? Like that's basically what
Yeah.
it was. It was like a hockey locker room put in like into a movie set, and
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
everything goes. There's no filter. That's it.
yeah,
It's hockey locker room.
and I think what made it such a great movie was the authenticity of it.
Yes.
Because Ned Dowd was in those locker rooms. He played in that league, and it still fascinates me that at the time, because we're talking early 70s, Nancy Dowd, a woman, wrote that script. Because if you just showed that script to someone and said this is from the early 70s, no one would guess a woman wrote it, right? And that's not a knock on women or writing or anything. It's just that at that time, that kind of movie, it was a guy's movie, right?
yeah,
But it was so great because Ned was, like you said, he carried the tape recorder around. All that stuff was just real.
Right.
We've all been in that hockey locker room. Anyone who played hockey has been in that locker room, busting balls and going back and forth. And I mean, it was just so great.
Push that pelvis way up there, way up there.
Maurice is one of my favorite characters. His lines, I mean, half of them I couldn't say.
Oh, he's the best.
no, I know. He's such. You want to wash your hands after you. He's such a sweet, and he's the sweetest guy. I think he's a born again Christian or something. I'm not sure, but he's not that character at all.
No,
Good actor.
He's one of my favorites. So let's what we want to do is just play a couple scenes. We'll play a scene and then talk about it. Some of these are our favorite scenes, your favorite scenes, Peter. Some of them are just iconic scenes from a sports movie. And let's start off with when the Hansons got picked up at the train station by Paul Newman.
Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, and St. Louis now ready for boarding at Gate 2. Please have your tickets available.
You guys are Hansons.
Fucking machine took my quarter.
Who are you? Reggie Dunlop, the coach. Grab your freaking gear and let's get going.
Okay. Come on, Steve, let's go.
Took my quarter.
You think they show Speed Racer here?
Hey, guys, hey! Wait up! Hold on! Good eye guy! You guys triplets or something?
No, I'm in the middle. Steve's 20 and Jeff's 18.
Where you from? Iron League. The Iron League, huh? A lot of fights?
Hey, I want a soda.
We pay for you here for a week, then you gotta find a room of your own.
Okay, Coach. Give me a grape and an orange and none of that stinking root beer.
We go on the road tomorrow morning. We're on the road in the morning.
I told you, I don't want
Bus
it.
leaves the War Memorial at 8 a.m.
I gave you a quarter at the bus station. Well, will you give me another dime? I'm saving a dime to call Mom.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, you cheap son of a bitch. Are you crazy? Those guys are retards.
I got a good deal on those boys. The scout said they showed a lot of promise.
They brought their fucking toys with them.
Well, I'd rather have them playing with their toys than playing with themselves.
They're too dumb to play with themselves. Boy, every piece of garbage that comes in the market, you gotta buy it.
Reg, that reminds me. I was coaching in Omaha in 1948, and Eddie Shore sends me this guy that's a terrible masturbator, couldn't control himself. Well, he would get deliberate penalties so he could get into the penalty box all by himself, and damned if he wouldn't.
Oh, Jesus.
What was his name?
How was Paul Newman to work with? And I know you have some great Paul Newman stories for later on, but we were talking last night. Paul Newman, if you didn't like Paul Newman, something's wrong with you.
Yeah. And I can
He was a
attest to
class
that.
act.
He was a total class act. And the thing that's really, so just in this get together tonight and really sort of putting this together like I haven't before, and that is that not that I hadn't before, but in more detail, and that is George Wright Hill realizing that having hockey players as actors was going to make his life a lot more difficult. But he knew that was right for the movie. And when the story I'm going to tell later went down, I had a lot of sympathy for him because he was truly a great director. And Paul Newman was a consummate professional. This is one of the reasons you couldn't make the movie the way we did. There was beer on the set all day long, coolers. The guys were drinking all day long, including Paul Newman. Paul Newman could outdrink any one of these guys. And he was in the hotel pool 5 o'clock in the morning doing laps before he came to work. And he was a pretty good skater. What do you think, if you were to ask Paul Newman up there at the pearly gates, his favorite movie was, what do you think it would be?
Slapshot all day.
Exactly. Well, that's his favorite. And
he did say that, right, in an interview.
Yes, he
one
did.
time.
Yeah, that's how I knew it. But that combination and the magic of the Hansons, what they brought to the table, they were just naturals. It was kind of chemistry. Having done a lot of movies, you know this as a movie watcher. When you're watching a perfect movie, everything is in sync. Everything is at the right pace, at the right tone, the right music. I mean, every time I hear the song, it's all right. Get it back to it. I always think it's
that's what I walked in. We walked into my wedding with that song.
Yeah.
No way.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was my.
You
Let's
hear
go.
that, and immediately you think of Slapshot.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So now, when they show up to take the bus trip the next day, this is one of my favorite scenes for a couple of reasons. Ned Braden and his wife Lil.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about the characters in this movie was so well done, so well developed, and so perfectly put together. They teach you to underline in college. That's one of my favorite lines. You underline the fuck scenes.
I love. Watch this. Watch what Brady does. Are you guys brothers?
You guys brothers. That's a scene I can only imagine if you're there doing that. That's like just a fun scene.
Oh, to try and not laugh while things are happening. It's just like the surprise. I mean, Strother Martin in his own right, Lindsay Krause, who's, comes from a real prominent theater family and all that. She's in a lot of Paul Newman movies. Michael Onkeen, who's, as you guys know, great skater and UNH and all that. So yeah, the strong cast along with these discoveries on the ice was just an incredible combination. Strother Martin alone was just, what we got here was a failure to communicate. He was like, I just wanted to work with him for that.
Even the wives, the characters, right? Like
Johnny's
wife, Johnny
chewing the
Upman's
gum,
wife, right?
Yeah,
and like even they were just perfect. Like you said, it gelled perfectly. Johnny says you can only drink so much and screw so much. Like just just great.
Because like you had those like 3 different types of girls, right? You had like the it was just like that was so well. Yeah, like you said, nail on the head. Yeah.
Well, that scene when they're sitting in the car waiting for the bus to come back from the trip.
Yeah.
And Lil Braden is just miserable, right? And the other girls are talking, and I only drink in the afternoon.
I've been stiff all week.
It's like that little scene right there is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and it nothing to do with hockey, but it's an insight into what it's like to be married to a minor league pro hockey player at the time.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
Putting on the foil, I think, might be one of the more iconic scenes ever in a movie, because this is when you really get an insight into the Hansons.
It leads into their first time you actually see them on the ice, and their first shift is probably one of the most iconic movie scenes of all time.
My father could say that.
I felt good all the way.
Oh, skate lace. you guys doing?
Putting on the foil every game.
Yeah, you want some? No. Jesus fucking Christ, they're gonna leave the bench.
No. Was that, where did the foil idea come from? Was that something that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's something. I don't know whether it's something that league of hockey that those guys did. You know, in hockey, I know there's a scene in the movie. I don't know if you're going to show it, where about the pregame. Have you?
Yeah, we're going to show that.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know because it's in the script. So obviously, it came from somewhere.
I don't know if they actually did it in the minors or not. I think like you might hear like one or two like stories of someone like, you know, money in their knuckles or something, but I don't think it was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just wild that if they actually did it, that's insane.
No, this is at Utica. This is the Utica rink.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is the pregame fight scene.
Because I've worked at all three buildings, Utica, Syracuse, and Johnstown. Yeah.
That's right.
The Peter Burrell Patriots versus the Charlestown Chiefs. Brought to you by Sheehan's Rustproofing. The Chiefs have just come out on the ice for a warm-up period. They're about to try for their 5th consecutive win. They're getting a good round of applause from their own booster club, who have traveled all the way from Charlestown to be here in Peterborough tonight. No one to stop it because there are no officials on the ice. What has come over the Charlestown Chiefs?
And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
I got my eye on the three of you guys. You pull one thing, you're out of this game. Now I run a clean game here. I have any trouble, I'll suspend you. I'm listening to a fucking song!
Like the look in before as they're skating around, you know, and then just this clothesline is just absolute classic.
The first time I saw this as a kid, I was like, it was unreal. I'll never forget the first time I seen this scene. It was like, it's etched in my brain.
And this happened in a game that I was refereeing. We weren't out there. There were no refs out there.
Right.
So it was like, sort it out yourselves, boys.
Rick Sharp, who's the makeup artist, did an amazing job of continuity because, you know, if there's a cut, a bleeding cut from game one, but then there's another cut in game two, but the game one is still, so there's a whole continuity of stuff that has to go on. And you can imagine these guys, you know, sitting in a makeup chair, you know, for hours getting makeup on and how impatient they were. Well, Rick Sharp is about 5'2", stocky but strong, and then very, very highly regarded makeup artist. And he's a likable guy. You don't dislike him. So one day we're trying to get makeup to come out on the ice to do touch-ups, and you can't find him. And so I go looking for him, and I find him in the locker room. The hockey players have stripped him down. They've taped his feet together and created a harness, and they've hung him up on a hook. And that's the story there. But the backstory to this scene, which is remarkable, is that Nancy Dowd and while we were prepping the movie, the Johnstown Jets were rehearsing with us, but they were also in the playoffs in their league. And so we would, at the end of the day, we would have a section of the auditorium set aside for us to go watch the game. So Nancy Dowd and George Roy Hill were having a debate over the believability of this scene, that he didn't think it would be realistic that this could ever happen. Well, they were in the final playoffs. Johnstown went up to Buffalo, played a game, and one of the final games, which would lead to the last game to be in Johnstown. And while they were there, there was an incident where somebody threw something on the ice and hit one of the Johnstown Jets, whatever. So when they came back to Johnstown, while we were working with them, they said, come to the game early tonight. So we all got over there early, and Buffalo came out on the ice. Johnstown came out on the ice, no ref, and they got into it. So bad that Buffalo left the ice, got on their bus, forfeited the game. And Nancy Dowd turned to George and said, so now let's talk about my scene.
That's awesome. They just left. That's incredible.
That scene.
Imagine that.
That's how that's,
And that made it easy, I'm sure, that night for the refs, because that's a full game fee with no work.
Yep.
One team leaves.
The check doesn't bounce, right?
No way. That's the best. That's crazy. And so we did have that, and the league had to go to the video to see who started it, the whole thing. But we weren't going. Someone came in the locker room and said, hey, they're fighting out here. And we were like, okay,
That happened.
good. We're not.
Yeah, it happened twice to me. Once in the Coast League, once in the American League. But it was like they gathered. It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes the story of, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, right. This isn't art. This is sex.
Maurice, you make me sick when you speak. All we do is quote this movie. That's the best part about this.
It's hard not to.
Our favorite movie to quote.
We were quoting it with Jerry Thornton on the way home.
Jerry
Yeah,
Thornton.
that was an awesome ride home. Yeah.
We had
We laughed
Jerry
our ass
Thornton
off.
from Barstool on, and he's a big movie guy. And the whole ride home, the whole 45-minute, 50-minute ride home back to the South Shore from here with Jerry, all we did was quote Slapshot. And we quoted Better Off Dead. We were quoting everything, all of them. So it's just so great.
I mean, the opening scene, where you go, with the French, you go, you get and you go in the box, you feel bad.
Yeah.
You feel shame, then get free.
Yeah.
Danny Lemieux, the guy who played him, was fantastic.
Yeah, he really was. I mean, yeah, even the actors that were there were just, I mean.
My college roommate before every game would say, let's really try to win this one, guys. Right at that perfect moment when it was like that, like eerie silent, and everyone just kind of like quiet before you walk out. And then he would just hammer that and be like, all right, we're ready.
That's awesome. Danny Lemieux is just great.
The movie has got to have inspired hockey players to love the sport even more, I would think,
100%.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, going to Johnstown to the War Memorial, I mean, my first trip there, and I'm sure you experienced the same thing. Like it was wild how the building is exactly the same. The bricks are the same. Where they open the garage doors and let everyone in, like all that was exactly the same. Yep. And the seats and it was just insane. Just being there in the building of your favorite movie. How often do you get to do that?
Yeah, my parents came out for that trip. So the first time I was in Johnstown, my father's like, "We're going." So they came out.
Never play Lady of Spain again.
I mean, how many of us that song alone, we all heard that song more times than we would ever want to hear it. And it's such a horrible song. I've heard it as a kid.
Every time you hear it now, too, you're like, never play Lady of Spain. You have to say it. And it's right after just a great scene with Reg Dunlop and Phil McCracken. Tim McCracken. Phil is, that's a stupid name. with Dr. Hook outside when he puts the bounty on him, right? Just a classic line.
My favorite thing was when the organ guy had the helmet on after taking the
After taking the slap shot from the Hansons.
Yes.
And he had the helmet on when he
He had
went
the
up and
helmet,
ripped
yeah,
it.
when he ripped it off. It's the best. It's like that little attention to detail was awesome.
And I just thinking about that last scene where the band is in the stands, Ned Braden is stripping on the ice, and just the enthusiasm they had. There was just this energy. It was like,
yeah.
I mean,
It's so great.
we took over that town. I mean, the town was, was ours, and everybody was into it.
It's excellent.
And that town's not that big. I mean,
No,
it's
it's not
really,
big at all.
it's just a little depressed little city that, was fun to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once.
And how many times, matter of fact, when we were golfing, and when your dad yelled on my backswing.
Oh, yeah. What he said.
Classic. It's in a clip. And all I could say to him was, I love you, suck back. It's like, that's a line that you just use, right? And inevitably someone says, all I can get.
All I can get.
It's so great. It's so great. So this is one of the best stories that I heard you tell in Manchester.
So this is a simple scene, no big deal. It's just one actor. Ned Braden's not even there, but it's when they've had this falling out, and Paul Newman is going over to Ned's house to sort of square things away and so forth. So he pulls up in the car, he gets out, no answer on the door. There's a quick cutaway to the trees where you think somebody's going in there or something. And then he's talking to the woods, basically saying, come on, blah, 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 whatever. So the problem is the camera was in front of the house, looking straight, house off to the right, and the driveway, and then off to the left is the road coming up. So you're seeing everything except the woods behind us. So there's no way you can have any of the trucks in the scene. So all the trucks are at the end of the driveway, but on the side of the house, and all the crew is there. So they're like 10 feet from where Paul Newman is, but the camera doesn't see them. So when Paul does a rehearsal, and by the way, this was when Paul was starting to become a really well-known race car driver. So he was very familiar with cars. So he says to George on the second rehearsal, he said, this time, George, when we go, I'm going to take it a little easy because I'm having a little problem with the brakes. And without hesitation, starts to get in the car. And then he turns to all of us in the crew, or right in front of him, and said, I'm going to miss my mark. I'm going to go out of frame. And then I want you to make it sound like I hit the trucks and everything else and get a bunch of crap and throw it down the driveway. So, when you tell a crew that you want something that wasn't planned, every one of those crew members has a huge truck with all I don't want to get caught not being able to deliver. So the prop man and the wardrobe department and the special effects department, camera department, they all have extra stuff. So Paul Newman backs down and they roll camera and he pops the clutch, and now he's flying up the road twice as fast as he was before. Comes into the driveway, the back end starts to spin around. There's a little bridge there, and the back end just barely clears that, comes up to his mark, hits the brakes, goes out of frame, and now everything is still, except now camera cans, wardrobe, leaves, there was smoke, everything that you could think of is coming out of the side of the house into the frame. And the makeup guy happened to find an old tire in the back of the house. And so when everything's settled, he just rolled the tire down the driveway. And the last moment was it spinning at the bottom and stopping. Dead silence. Nobody, we're laughing, but over at camera, nobody's laughing. And that camera was just the first AD, cameraman, George Wright Hill, script supervisor, and I think Nancy Dow. Well, George Wright Hill was not happy at all. And Paul's closing remark was, oh, you're just mad because you got schnookered, But what we didn't know is that George and I have all due respect for him, but I think this was a moment where all the pressure had gotten to him. He called the production manager and told him to get out to the set and take the name of everybody involved in the accident, in the prank, and I want him on a plane tonight. No, tomorrow night, because we had to do the float parade the next day, and you couldn't get rid of those guys. So they would go on a Saturday, Sundays we had off, and they'd fly new people in. So there's 35 people we're going to get fired. And the thing is that the next day, everything had to be like clockwork, because there was a real parade going on in Johnstown, and they weren't going to stop it for us, but they would let us open an opening and slide all our floats in, do that whole spiel, and then slide out. You get one take, and then the parade would continue. So every department head had to be on their game to make that work. And that happened, and that worked, and everything was fine. That night, Sue Newman, who was Paul's daughter, who was working on the movie, she plays the pharmacist, and she was living with us in the hotel. And she said that she told us in the bar that night that Paul called her over to his house and said, I have to do something I've never done in my life. And I just want to, and she said, yeah, that sounds good. Paul Newman got into his car, went over to George Roy Hill's house, knocked on the door, and said simply, it was my gag. And if anybody gets on that plane, I'm going to be the first one with them, and you can stick this movie up your ass.
Good for Paul.
Was that one of the classiest things I've ever seen in that?
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. And everybody stayed. Nobody got fired. And there was a little. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There was a little friction, but I think George, I don't think anybody realized just the kind of risk that George, the vulnerability that he took to put this together. And he's the director. And so, it was unfortunate that it happened, but I got to have a nice conversation with him when the movie ended before everybody flew back. There was people gathered in the bar, and Bob Crawford, who was his producer on all his movies, tried to encourage him to get out. And, there's only a few directors that I've worked with, like Martin Ritt and Sidney Lumet and of course, on Slapshot. George Roy Hill is, he's done so many great movies. Anyway.
Yeah. So George Roy Hill, a lot of people might not be familiar with him or who he was or his work, because he was a huge director.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal to have him working on this film.
Oh yeah. Yep, absolutely. But it was a labor of love for him. It wasn't like, I think George was very interested in this movie from the get-go, and very, he's a real classy guy. One story I can tell about George Roy Hill, it really tells you a lot about his sense of humor. He couldn't skate for shit. So we had to have a director's chair out on the ice that he would sit on, and we would just push him around. But he could occasionally skate. He had skates on because he'd freeze his feet. Well, every day about 4 o'clock, the prop man would bring him a beaker, a cup with ice and scotch in it. And he would hand it to him so he could just take the edge off of the day, right? So I happened to be leaning on his chair talking to him just about stuff, about the business or whatever. We was having a nice conversation. And then Vic Kemper, the cameraman, said, George, can you come over here for a second? And so George gets up and he hands me his drink and he starts to skate off. And then he stops. He turns around, takes the pen out of his pocket, goes around the chair to me, and then marks the line where the scotch level is and skates off. It's all you need to know.
That's great. That is such a great story. Right? That's great. Now, one of my favorite, well, I keep saying one of my favorite scenes. The whole thing is my favorite. But one of my favorite stories you told had to do with this scene where the school bus of the boosters
Yes.
is following the Charlestown bus. And they stop, they pull over so that the boosters can join the hockey players.
So
Yeah.
the backstory of that scene is that there's a booster club in the script, and it's primarily women who are fans of the hockey players and the hockey team, and they've got a school bus that they travel around in, and they are what we call continuity extras. It means that they are in scene 1, 9, 25, 50, they're in the whole movie, and you can't lose them. You can't just keep replacing them. So a very extensive casting session went on for the extras, the special extras, to be the booster club. So for weeks while we were first prepping the movie, we were interviewing people to be in the booster club. One of the conditions was that they would be available for throughout the shooting, that we wouldn't lose them, but also that they would agree to stick their bare ass out of a school bus window in one scene in the movie. So come the day, we're in Hyannisport shooting. We're in Ligonier, Pennsylvania, shooting for Hyannisport. And the first scene scripted is the two buses are out on a local gas station or whatever out in the middle of nowhere, and they pull off to the side. And this sets up the sort of interplay between them, where the hockey players run off their bus, go in and grab the booster club and bring them onto their bus. So that now we've got men and women all kind of partying and going crazy as they go to Hyannisport, where there's a group in the town square standing there ready to protest, So what happened is when we rolled camera for the first take, everything was as scripted except for one thing. The hockey players had no clothes on. So they ran out of the bus, not scripted, wasn't supposed to be that way, grabbed all these local Johnstown ladies and kicking and screaming into the bus. And George goes, cut, no. Well, the problem with that scene was the mayor of Ligonier had his children see things that he was hoping they'd be a little older before they saw it in their life. So he said, I don't care about this movie. You're not shooting downtown. It's done. You're finished. So what are we going to do? So the producers, what they finagled and apologized, and Maya culpas, and they're just kids, the hockey players, they don't know any, but whatever they said, I don't know what they did, but we got to shoot. Well, so now I am with the group. Now, when we move into Hyannisport, when we move into Ligonier, the hockey team buses are just outside of town, and we're in the town square, and I'm working with the extras who are protesting, and George Roy Hill is there. And we get a radio call from the assistant director out by the buses, and he says, none of the girls want to do the deal anymore. And we said, no, what are you going to do? They go, no, I think they claim they're all, they feel that they've been violent, whatever. I don't know what the dialogue was, but there was a real problem. So now it was a frantic effort to get anybody we could to stick their ass out of the bus, male or female. So we're getting that takes a bit of time. So finally, George wants to know what's going on. And he said, we're all set to go. We're just missing one ass. So I raised my hand and said, what are you paying? And George Roy Hill's line, I'll never forget it. He says, Burrell, get your ass down to that bus. So I'm in the bus. I drop my trowel. I've stuck my ass out of the window, and there's this one lady who was not going to give up. She was going to do it no matter what. She had to be 65 years old, and she was right next to me. Her ass is out of the bus, and I looked at her and smiled at me. You ready? And she said, you bet. And I said, let's go. So when you see the movie, I actually claimed in Manchester I was the first ass in the yellow bus, but my wife now claims, no, you're not. You're the second ass in the bus. And I think she's more qualified to determine that than I am. So anyway, yeah, these guys, by the way, Eugene and Josh, Mark and company, they managed to freeze frame on that so that my ass is bigger than me in this theater. I'm standing in front of it.
Yeah, we
Uh,
put it up on the big screen,
Yep.
and Peter stood next to it.
Oh, that's
It
awesome.
was Peter and then his ass. It was fantastic. I'll see if I get a picture of
Oh,
that.
that's awesome.
Oh, that is just fantastic. And so you mentioned the scene with the parade, and I was talking to Gino on the way up. That was, you had one shot, because that was a parade actually happening.
Correct. Yeah. We got to go in.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's the time when, it's funny, there's a synergy. What I love about the movie business is it's just a huge combination of disciplines. Dancers, actors, grips, electricians, carpenters, special effects, all these people that come together with their own deal to do. And I've often said that if you handed a crew a script and they had no conversations with anybody, they would be able to prep it, because the unions are very specific about who does what and who does not do what. In fact, I always found that the Achilles heel of the IA contract is towels, because towels can be props, they can be makeup, they can be set dressing, they can be wardrobe. So it's like you have to have a discussion about that. But pretty much everything else, the crew knows that everything on the table is one thing, but the table itself is another discipline, and the walls are another, and so on and so forth. And so when that's all working together, it's really talking about teamwork. I tell you what I enjoy the most about being in the business is the ability to put people together who are so different in personality and in craft, and then create an environment without fear. Because if you have a person who's screaming and yelling all the time, nobody's going to take a risk. Nobody's going to step out of the box and try and do something different. If a crew member says to me, Peter, I need to tell you something. You got your head up your own ass so far you can't think straight. That's the best compliment you can give me, because that means the person is not afraid to tell me I got my head up my ass. So
right.
That's the magic and the teamwork, which I think people in sports can appreciate that.
That's
constructive criticism. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can't take constructive criticism in anything you're doing, you might as well just pack it in.
As referees, we both have been told, take your head out of your ass what game you're watching at some point by a supervisor. So it's very much in line with
More often, yeah.
you more often. Only because you did more games. So obviously Slapshot, best movie ever made. For your career, is that the movie you enjoyed the most, or was there another movie maybe that wasn't as fun, but you see as more of an accomplishment?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot, and it's really difficult to answer because there is no favorite movie. There's a movie that's a favorite in terms of the specifics of it. But Working on the Natural was another sports movie I worked on.
Right.
And that was fun to work on because it was just a big production. And I think baseball players appreciated it. But then I worked on a movie about the ballet called The Turning Point and got to work with Baryshnikov, and watching him work. And just, we were shooting ballet scenes at the Minskoff Theater in New York, and he had injured himself, but he had, taped himself up or whatever. And he would, on cue, and I would be in the wings, he would leap out on the stage. I mean, get such incredible air, do everything perfectly, and then come off stage and grab his knee and take a breath. I mean, he was obviously in horrible pain. So just being able to witness those things, and also witnessing movies where they talk about social justice, things like that, where it's, looking out for the little guy. My dad was a big sports fan, and I always asked him, he always rooted for the same team, and it was the underdog. That was who. He also got to go to his biggest thrill in life was being in Yankee Stadium when Bob Feller pitched his perfect game. So that was a big deal.
Cool.
I still have the tickets that he
Nice.
saved for me. So it's like, I think what's important for me is the fact that when we work together as a team, like that when you're coaching, if you're watching a sporting event and it's just getting really exciting because both teams are evenly matched and there's not a lot of penalties going on, everybody's just on the top of their game. That's the most exciting event, no matter what sport it is, because you're watching perfection. And I think when you see those games, the team that loses is just as excited about that moment, because that moment when you're just right there is just exciting. It's the kind of goosebumps.
It makes sports great.
Yeah. And that happens for referees too. When we have that game and we know it was that game, someone still thinks you suck, but that's the nature of the business, right? I mean, what can you do?
The man in charge always sucks,
Hey, as long as the check doesn't bounce, I didn't care. No.
Right? Good point. Very good point. Peter, this has been absolutely amazing. I mean, breaking down our favorite movie of all time, just, from your point of view, which is so unique.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I worked at USHL and there was apartments all over the Midwest, and the Des Moines apartment had this thing on loop. Like if you walked in, that movie was playing. Yep. It was always on. Yeah.
Honestly, when I was working the East Coast League, which was that league,
right. Yeah.
The Johnstown Chiefs played in Johnstown. We would watch that movie, no lie, at least 1 to 2 times a week. Like if nothing was on, we weren't doing anything, that thing went in the VCR. For you young kids, that's how we used to watch movies. And we'd watch it, and then we'd quote it on the 3-hour ride.
Yep.
The whole way. So
I think that's interesting because there are certain movies that I can watch over and over again.
Yep.
And at my age now, it's even better because I don't remember watching it the first time. So there you go. But
that's what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, right. You have to look forward. But it's just, I can watch Shawshank over and over again.
Yep.
I can watch, some of the more comedy movies, like Three Amigos or Bridesmaids. Who would have thought that women could put together such a it was hysterical,
That movie's awesome.
And Cool Hand Luke or whatever. It's just there are certain movies that just they stick. Of course, the Godfather movies and everything.
Oh yeah.
What's your favorite movie of all time?
I don't really have one, but I would say that some of the movies that I worked on are favorites because I was personally involved, obviously. But putting that aside, I would say obviously the Godfather series, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, the David Lean movies, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile.
A good one.
Good one.
Yeah. Trying to think. The movie that Paul Newman did, Justice. What it was? Yeah. That was Lindsay Krause. Lindsay Krause played that person. I wanted to be a nurse. That's one of the most, just that one line says it all, And then in Network is another one, and Hospital and Network. My favorite line in that movie is when his wife says, "I'm your wife." God damn it, I deserve better than that. So it's like, everybody quotes the Ned Beatty speech and all that, but there's other lines in that. I mean, Sidney Lumet was, when I was starting in the business in New York, people would say, I'd say, "Hey, we're having a good time." And he said, "No, but you haven't worked for Sidney yet. When you work for Sidney, then you'll have an experience." So anyway, I could come up with I have a ton of movies I love. We'll be here all night if I keep.
Well, it's kind of an unfair question, really. I mean,
yeah,
because
right.
We've talked about it before, and you kind of have to break it down into genres almost. Best favorite sports movie, favorite comedy, favorite drama,
Good point.
To say one movie, how do you compare Slapshot to, A Few Good Men,
right,
or Shawshank, or those movies? So it's an unfair question, but
no, it's a fun question though. Don't.
Yes.
It's fun to. fun to remember the movies that you love. I mean, that's what I'm in the business for. Right now we're in this situation where it's Academy Award time, and so now I start getting 150 movies or more sent through a link that I have to watch to determine who I'm going to vote for in the Academy Award. So I get this. This is a crunch time to see a lot of movies, even the shorts and the animations and the documentaries and the foreign films, all of that. It's just, I think that what I like about the business and what it creates is stories that are making a point, whether it's to laugh or to cry or to incite or to inspire, with emotion and visuals and music. It's just this powerful force of presenting ideas, and no matter what the subject. I mean, you were asking about David Kelly. When I are we getting too late? No. Are we getting
No.
No.
We can go as long as we want.
When you were asking me about David Kelly, I had been working in features the whole time, and I had worked on a movie called Jingle All the Way, a kind of so-so Christmas
Arnold
movie.
Schwarzenegger, right?
Yeah. And so, but my wife around that time gave birth, not realizing it until the 7th month, to our twin boys. And so we were going, whoa, now I got a daughter and twin boys. I think it's time to be off the road. So I was at Fox, and I asked the film department to introduce me to the TV department. And that's what led to getting on Ally McBeal. And I was going, well, this was before TV was now better than most movies. But back then I was thinking, I don't know about TV. I got on the movie, and Ally McBeal was sort of struggling. It wasn't necessarily going to go, but David said, hang in there. He told the studio, believe me, this is a different movie. This is a different show. They will, as you know, it all caught on. And it was an amazing show. They called it a dramedy because it was half drama, half comedy. We'd be crying in some episodes, and then we'd be laughing in other episodes. And the characters there, again, were outrageous. And people, when people would say, David, I don't, when the critics, or when the standards and practices guys would say, David, I don't think that's very believable. And he'd say, we're making a movie about a woman who sees dancing babies. So what's believable? And then people would call us and say, how did you design the unisex bathroom? It's like they wanted to do it. He said, it's a joke. But it reignited Al Green. Yeah, it reignited Peter McNichol reignited Al Green's career with his dancing in the bathroom. But just the relationships and the writing was just, David wrote everything. And he would be writing a script for Ally and a script for the practice every week by himself. And they were never late. And we rarely changed them. And it was an amazing time. And
he did so many great TV shows, great TV shows. And Mystery Alaska, of course, a great hockey movie that he did.
Yeah.
So
it was
awesome.
It was a thrill to work with.
We could probably talk all night because this is just fascinating stuff. I mean, it's just the fact that you worked with David E. Kelly. I mean, that dude is just incredible.
He really
talked about him a lot. With Mystery Alaska, the best opening scene ever.
Never heard him.
The river.
Never heard him scream or yell. Never heard him. He respected everybody. He just was a straight guy, stand-up guy, and it was the only job I had that lasted more than a year, because I worked on Ally and then went over to Boston Public. And so for like 5 years, I was just working for David Kelly. And it was just phenomenal. The episodes, we actually got a Peabody Award for one of the episodes on Boston Public. So he would get the subject matter, and then he'd bring in these guest actors and doing dance numbers. I loved it when we did dance numbers. It was like dancing in the office, and just everything was a surprise. But then he would hit you with something. One of the things I love to do is he always did a Christmas episode, and there would always be a scene where Callista Flockhart, Allie would be walking down the street, and there would be snow on the ground and snow coming down and Christmas lights. And we always did it on the Paramount backlight, which is in the summertime or whatever when we're doing it. So I just loved the process of turning the Paramount backlot, filling the stores with merchandise, adding the Christmas lights and adding the snow, and then having it come down and rolling camera. And that's, my God, we just created winter in Southern California. It's like,
That's pretty wild.
That's so
that's
cool.
fun.
It's awesome
Yeah.
how that all comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to experience one day when we make Penalty Box, my movie.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta get that made for sure. I think I sent you a copy. Did I, Peter, or no?
No, I don't think so.
I
No.
didn't. Oh, as soon as we're done here, I'm sending you that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because it's based in the same league as Slapshot.
Yeah.
So
Oh, really?
it's-
Okay.
yeah, but it's from the referee's.
Referee's perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's as my co-writer, I wrote it with John Siemens. He was an actual screenwriter, not a knucklehead like me, with all the stories. But he said it's Slapshot meets The Hangover, basically. So I think you'll enjoy it. I'd love to. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it for sure.
Is it
And,
irreverent? I take it it's another irreverent movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you'd like
okay.
it. I think
I like
you're
your
gonna
I like your irreverent humor. I'm
it.
not big on
Exactly.
slapstick.
Oh no, this is good stuff. You'll like it. You'll like it. So,
I look forward to it.
Again, it's been an absolute thrill to have you on Chirping Zebras. I mean,
Oh, no,
this has been.
Incredible.
Yeah, we could go on and on. I mean, we
No,
could, we really could.
my
might
pleasure.
have to have
It's
you
been
on
my
again.
pleasure. I've enjoyed this immensely. You guys are good interviewers, and you ask
appreciate
good
that.
questions, and it brings back a memory. We're all smiling for the same reason, you know.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's just-
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, I watched the movie again today just to make time notes. And I'm laughing, sitting alone with my Yorkie. Frankie Chirps was watching it with me.
I have a 9-year-old daughter that plays hockey, and I keep like, it's like, when do you show it to her?
There's a couple scenes you might have to.
I might wait. Fast forward.
Yeah. And the made-for-TV version is not the same.
No.
Yeah, and if you cut out all the bad stuff, it'd only be 3 minutes long. So there's no-
Yeah, right.
Should never meet Maurice.
It'll be the parade at the end.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's
That's
it.
it.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Uh,
Enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you.
Seriously, we want to thank AOA Studios for hosting us here. As always, we want to thank our sponsor, the Referee's Crease, one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. We want to remind you to find us on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, the TikTok.
The TikTok.
We're up over 6,000 followers right now on the
How
TikTok.
about that?
So we're killing it. We're also starting our live show, weekly live show, CZP video review show. So check that out.
If I can get Chrome to work.
We'll figure that out for you. Don't worry. But we'll be live on all the everywhere. YouTube, the whole ball of wax. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll see you next time right here in the Chirping Zebras.